Hey, good morning. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Lee Bowersox. I am the chairman of the NVSL Diving Training Committee. With us today, I've got a number of members of our executive committee. Amy Broom is our recording secretary in the back, and she happens to be our local coordinator. Mike Schaefer here is the head of our rules committee. Jim Sweeter is our chief official. Lynn is
Cracker Jack
committee chairman. All right. And like I said, I'm with the training committee. So today I've got a few notes. I'm going to do some introductory stuff here to give you all some heads up, some things that we want to make sure you cover. And then I'm going to turn it over to Doug Beavers. Doug will be leading most of today's presentation. Doug is the head coach at George Mason University dive team. And he has a list of accomplishments that is longer than I know, but he's been doing this for Montgomery Dive for a number of years. And so he's very well rehearsed and very knowledgeable. All right, so want to make sure everybody has a handbook. Somebody just came in. Did you have a handbook? Also want to let you know that we're passing around a QR code. That's for the survey. After the clinic's over, if y'all could take the survey in the next day or two, so we can get some feedback and help to make our clinics all that the better. Now that you have a handbook, I'm going to ask that you read it. You don't have to read it cover to cover, but the diving section is only 18 pages long. As you can see, they're small pages, so it shouldn't take too long. But please read through that. Understand that there's a lot of rules in there that may not come up every day to day, but you're going to encounter those. Coaches who are 18 years old and older need to take safe sport training. You can do that, coordinate with your team rep to get them, because it's going to cost, and your team should cover that for you. So make sure that you've taken safe sport training. Also, all coaches, regardless of age, need to take concussion training. The links for that are on the NVSL website. We have other clinics going on, including referee and judging clinics. Y'all are welcome to go to those if you would like. We won't be able to, as a coach, we won't be able to certify you as a referee or have you serve as a judge. But if you want to know what we're teaching our judges and referees to look out for, that may help you as you're coaching your divers. You're welcome to attend those clinics. Rule changes. For those of you who have been doing this for a while, there are some new rule changes this year. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are a couple that you need to know about. There's a clarification on one regarding dive sheets. The accurate and timely turn-in of dive sheets. This is a clarification. The responsibility for dive sheets lies completely with the diver and the coach. So if you got little guys, it's probably strictly the coach. The referee and the team and the table workers should be checking those. It is not mandatory that they check them, but they should be checking those. If they miss something, there's a mistake and they miss it, it's not the fault of the referee or the table workers. The responsibility for accurate sheets lies with the coaches and the divers. Manifest twisting for twister dives, and this probably especially applies to the 5211A, where we're most likely to see this, or the 5111A. Manifest twisting is a referee's call, maximum of 2 points. In the past, it was a judge's call, and the judges may have missed it, but now if the referee perceives that they've seen manifest twisting on the board before the diver leaves the board, they'll call a maximum score of 2. If a diver fails 2 dives, they are disqualified, but if the reason for disqualification is just those 2 failed dives, they're allowed to continue in the meet. They just will not score any points for your team. Sometimes smaller events may only have 2 or 3 divers. That diver won't score a second or third place 1 or 3 points because they were disqualified. Once the meet starts, you can change 1 optional dive, or a diver can, and they'll probably consult with the coaches. They can change 1 optional dive. But if you have an improper sheet, for example, you have 2 optionals of the same group, they're only allowed 1. You cannot use that rule change, that dive change rule, to get you off the hook. An improper sheet is improper when the meet starts. Be aware that machine-generated dive sheets may contain errors. So if you're doing your sheets on some automated system, you need to double check to make sure that they are correct. All right, manifest twisting, not that one. Been asked to make sure that we all understand the difference and the restrictions on crackerjack meet versus divisionals. Rule 1K says a diver cannot dive in both the crackerjack meet and divisionals. If they dive crackerjack, which will come up first chronologically, they are not able to dive in divisionals. We've had issues with that in the past, concerns, so please be aware, one or the other, not both. Crackerjack is designed for developing divers, your younger folks. There is a maximum score they can achieve. If they do better than the cutoff score, cutoff scores are posted on the website. If they do better than that cutoff score during one of their dual meets, they're not eligible for crackerjack. We're not trying to allow ringers in there just to get a crackerjack medal. This is for the developing divers. For divisionals, you can put in 16 divers per team, and it can be any 16. If you choose to put in 16 freshmen, that's your prerogative. But more than likely, you're going to want to spread this out and take the best of your group from each of the individual ages and genders. Yes.
For crackerjack.
Yes.
So we have the score, which I get. Is it so? It's four dual A meets. They have, and then they have crackerjack, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So and the meets are due Wednesday.
I believe, we'll check, but I believe they're actually due
Crackerjack is due Friday.
Friday.
Okay, Friday. So that's fine. So if we have someone who's close to that score, you want us to tell those children, I can't guarantee you a crackerjack entry until your 4th A meet, and if you beat the score, you're out.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure, because my brain says,
too good.
So we're gonna fail a dive.
Yeah.
Well,
that's your you know what? That's your all's prerogative.
Listen,
I would not
their
advise
strategy,
that.
but if I know they're a developmental diver and they beat it by 1 point, it's a little bit of heartbreaking to some degree. I get kids who are 15 points higher, but when they're literally developmental and say sometimes, as we all know, judging could be a little high, then sometimes if they are a little high, then they miss out on opportunity because of not their fault. So
You can also petition.
Sure that it's a 4th beat and
Oh, you can also.
You can petition into Crackerjack if you have a case for it. Like, if your kid got the cutoff score, but they came in like 15th or something, or those scores were like outlandishly higher than all of their other meets, you can petition. It's not
I think those are
guaranteed.
going to be extraordinary. Sir.
Right, exactly.
Not frequently used.
You'd have to really make a case.
Okay. I have another hand.
You were saying something about the 16 divers in one group. I kind of missed the beginning part of that. What was that about?
You can send 16 divers total from your team, and there's no requirements on what age groups or genders they come from.
For
You
Cracker Jack?
or divisionals.
Okay, divisional.
You can pick any 16 divers, and like I said, you can load them all up in your freshmen. You can load them all up in your seniors. You can do 2 freshman boys, 2 freshman girls, 2, whatever works for you. Okay, any other questions? Meet sheets. Meet sheets are due half an hour before the meet starts, which notionally is 5:30 on a Tuesday evening. After the sheets are turned in, you cannot change the age group of a diver. You know, you're allowed to have divers dive up one age group. And you may need to do that for strategy-wise to try to get more points if you want to do that. But once those sheets are submitted at 5:30, those age groups are locked in, period. Whatever you sign them up for at 5:30 is what they're going to dive. You can make dive changes to the sheets between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. And to do that, you should either check with the meet manager or the referee to ensure that you're going to be making legal changes. We want to make sure those sheets are all legal at 6 o'clock when the meet begins. Please make your sheets in pencil in case you have to change it. No felt tip marker, which runs. No yellow highlighter, which we've seen before. Put them in pencil and as legible as possible so that we don't have problems because nobody can read what you wrote. Make sure your divers are aware what you've put on there. I know with the more experienced divers, they may be filling out their own sheets. But if you're filling them out, especially for the younger divers, make sure they know what you're signing them up for and that they're good with those things.
Quick thought.
Yes.
Just a strategy I use personally is on meet day, I have my kids do their dives in order of their list, so they get a mental memory of front dive, back dive, front flip inward, front dive, back dive, front flip inward, front dive, back dive, front flip inward. So they get a mental image of their dives in the order they're doing them. So just as a strategy.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Diving up, I mentioned that. One age group only is permissible. Coaches, during the meet, the team reps are supposed to be the folks interfacing with the judges and referees on any calls. Coaches are not supposed to be coming up to the referee to protest a call or to question something. Go to your team rep. If you think you've got a valid concern, have the team rep contact the referee. That is their job, not yours.
From a logistics point of view, though, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
From a logistics point of view, your team rep better be sitting next to you, because if you miss the spot and the next dive goes, it's game over, right? So if I'm not allowed as a coach to talk to the referee and I see a protestable situation, and I got to walk across to the food
Okay,
mart
well.
to find my team rep, you've got a problem, because
Or you
Okay.
say,
You're not
can
gonna
you
get-
hold
yeah.
referee, announcer, talking to you now.
hold it.
Mike?
Just a very quick thing, that I pass on to coaches, is don't yell out to your referees if you don't like the call.
Right, yes.
Please, don't.
Okay.
I have a question. I've never had to use
talk.
this, but I've always wondered, if a referee makes a call, am I, as a coach, allowed to say, can you put that in your memory so we can talk about it later? Because I don't want to, discuss it now, but can I say that or no? I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, I'm not
I've
sure.
never had that situation, but
I haven't
but
either.
if I wanted to talk to the referee about a dive and I did it at the end of the meet, they're like, I've no memory of what you're talking about. But if I could say to them, can you remember that so that we can
Put a
talk
pin in
later?
that. Put a pin in that one. Yeah.
Put a pin in that one. I just don't, I just need
What
an
do you think, Jim?
explanation. I don't know
I
the answer to that.
think that's perfectly acceptable, as long as you do it respectfully.
And it's
Yes.
And
nice,
exactly is what you,
Yeah.
what
kind
that's how you
tone.
should- Yeah, it's a tone.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yes.
And we like to see everybody, all the coaches and the table workers and the referees and the judges working as a team. So if you can just keep it collegial with everybody, I think that
Yes.
sets the
Okay.
tone for
It
the
seems
rest
like
of
a
the meeting.
fair thing
And
to
there's-
address.
And there's one more issue.
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
You have to know the difference between, in the opinion of the referee making a call, versus a question on the application of a rule. Those are different. Okay? The opinions are not protestable. But if it's a misapplication of the rule, then you can start that discussion. And the way to start the discussion is exactly like you said, Doug. Just, hey, team rep, can we have a conference? Or just, you can stop it.
I'd like to bring my team rep in to have a discussion.
Exactly. And as long as it's in a collegial frame like that, I think every referee would have no problem with doing that. And you want to solve a problem like that right then and there.
Yes.
You don't want to let it simmer for the rest of the meeting. And Anita, you're absolutely right. If you just say, can we talk about this at the end of the
Yeah.
meeting? Hey, I have
I'm
no
not
problem.
gonna try to change your mind, but I
No.
maybe need to understand,
What the rationale was.
Yep.
yeah.
And depending on where your team is and where your program is as it's moving along, you may have less experienced referees or judges, and it may be a learning moment where, like, we've had a number of occasions where a referee just made the wrong call, and then afterwards we talked about it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Okay." So, and they learn. So we get better.
All right, I've just got a couple last notes here. Sportsmanship and standards of conduct. The sportsmanship, the page 7 is your standards of conduct. The forward for what the league is all about, which stresses sportsmanship as well as teaching skills. There's a reason why these are at the front of the book. This is important. Please remember that. And as such, make sure your language is G-rated as you're talking with your kids. They will emulate you, and if you're using questionable stuff, they'll think that that's acceptable. Safety first. And, as a referee and judge, I ask that you remember referees and judges are volunteers. Some of them are brandy new. They're human. They make mistakes. And they don't always see things the same way you do. So if you disagree with a call, please be respectful and don't slash our tires in the parking lot. All right. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Doug.
Very good.
Any other questions on that?
I had a question
Yes.
on the ref interaction.
Yes.
If you hear a mistake that your diver doesn't hear, can you object, so to speak? Ask for a repeat?
You can ask to have a dive repeated. If the announcer calls something out
Or it's wrong?
before the dive starts, you can say, if you're not sure what that call was, you can ask to have it repeated. And I would not object if the coach called out and asked to have something repeated.
My pro tip for that is every one of my divers knows that if I ask the referee to repeat the dive, something is wrong. And I tell them that before the meet. If I say, please repeat the dive, you need to listen because you just set up for an inward and you're supposed to be doing a front dive or something like that, right? So your diver goes up and sets up backward for a front flip and you're like, could you repeat the dive, please?
Now, if they've already started the dive and you
then
do
you
that,
can't do it. Yeah.
that's coach assist and
That's
that's a failed dive.
You got to catch them as they're walking out.
And as a frequent announcer, I will, if I catch it, I will.
Re-announce it.
Excuse me, let me repeat that dive for you. But I
Let
have a
me be
unique
clear.
opportunity to do that, whereas.
Yeah.
Okay. Before Doug starts, I know a few folks came in and after I had passed out handbooks. Please raise your hand if you still need a handbook. You need a handbook? All right, go ahead, Doug.
Hello, everybody. My name is Doug. I'm the coach at George Mason University. I'm also the coach at Parliament Pool. And we are here to talk about coaching this summer. I'm going to give you a quick rundown. I apologize. I'm going to end up trying to do about 2.5 hours worth of material in an hour. So brace yourselves. I have a lot to talk about and a lot to share. I'm going to try really hard to be concise and clear. If you have questions, I would be so happy to talk afterwards, right? So let me know if there are clarifications. If you ask questions while I'm talking, we will never get anywhere. I will spin off in 1,000 directions. You've all got a teacher like this, right? That you can spin off into a direction anytime you want. So save your questions because I'm hoping that I will answer them before we're done. Lee just took care of our housekeeping. What we want to do is identify key roles and responsibilities. We want to understand the learning process that we're putting these divers through. I want to help you guys think a little bit about classroom management and how you're going to keep organized and stay on top of a group of divers. I want to help you identify performance standards, right? So how do I know if this dive is ready to be converted into the next dive? How do I know what the next step is and when to take that next step? I want to make sure that you guys are thinking about how you communicate effectively, making sure that the things you ask your divers to do are actually actionable, understandable, things that are physically possible. Those are always fun things to include in your instructions to children. Making that feedback effective. And then we can talk a little bit about practice procedures, setting up practices so that they're effective and so that you can get stuff done, and making sure that we're following safe progressions. And we'll talk more about that. Our key roles and responsibilities, some of you, this is your first job, right? Here's the deal. You either have volunteered or you're being paid to take on a role. It is a specific role with duties and responsibilities. The word duty has a legal meaning, and you are under that legal meaning when you are coaching diving. If you have taken on the commitment to do the job, you are now bound to do the right thing. You are here to learn a little bit about what the right thing is, but you are legally responsible for taking care of the children that you have signed up for. So let's pay attention, right? Let's take it a little bit seriously and let's do a good job. Because here's the thing, right? Like I used to work at a corporate job and do an office thing and typey and make the computer keyboard make the sounds all day. And you know what? A bad day at work meant that the company lost money. But a bad day at work in the diving well means somebody's bleeding. So pay attention, right? I will share with you things that I have learned. I will share with you things that I know for a fact work because I have done them over and over and over and over again. When I get to a point of opinion, I will try to identify that clearly, okay? I have strong opinions about things, right? I have feelings about this sport. So we want to ensure, as part of our roles and responsibilities, if you guys want to have conversations, step out. If your responsibilities are going to be very specific, you are ensuring safety and well-being of the athletes that you're responsible for. That is number one, right? The expectation is that you're going to pay attention and that you're going to take action when needed. You cannot passively watch practice and tell people they are long and short and too far out and think that you are doing this job. You are failing. Okay? There's more to it. So we expect that you're going to pay attention, that you're going to take action when needed. We need you to create an efficient diving practice for the organization that you're working for, right? And what that means is that you got to have a plan. It can't be chaos every time you walk in and then the kids telling you what they want to work on, right? There's organization that goes into this. There's planning that goes into this so that you can get all the dives done enough times before they compete, that they don't hurt themselves or embarrass themselves, right? And so that their parents can clap, right? That's really our goal, right? So the parents are expecting their kids to get instruction, not to just run wild, right? The divers, every one of the divers that you work with deserves instruction. They deserve your attention, and they deserve as many dives as they can get in during a practice. And that means that everybody in your workout is interdependent. If one kid wants to stand on the board and chitty chat, and you as the coach allow them to chat and negotiate with you about whether or not they really should do a back dive right now, and they're not really feeling it, right? And you end up in a 20-minute conversation, that is a disservice to everybody else on the team. Happens all the time. Y'all do it at meets. Drives me crazy. Want to have a chit chat with your diver on the board during a meet? Are you kidding me? During warm-ups, taking time from everybody, right? So everybody's depending on everybody else to get this right? We need the process to work smoothly so that everybody gets an opportunity to get better. Finally, part of your responsibility is to create a warm and welcoming atmosphere, right? And that atmosphere applies to every child on your team, not just the kids that are good, not just the kids that can point their toes, and not just the kids that you like. That is the difference between doing this professionally and just screwing around at the pool for fun. If you're not being if you're not professionally coaching, you have no obligation to treat everybody the same. But as soon as you take the job to be the coach at your pool, everybody is equal, regardless of talent level. Every child deserves your time, attention, and enthusiasm. And if there's one extra thing besides not letting the kids get hurt that I can get across to you today, when you are coaching, you are on stage. I do not act like I act when I am coaching in the rest of my life. They would have me arrested, right? I am a circus monkey when I am on the pool deck trying to keep 10-year-olds entertained and engaged and doing the right thing, right? I'm a performer, right? Just talent, just here swinging my arms around and yelling at children, right? So you are on stage, right? Lee referred to it already. This whole organization is founded on developmental principles. This is a developmental league. None of you needs to win any meets this summer. None of you. Not one of the teams in the NVSL needs to win a meet. What you need to do is take care of the people in your program. When you take care of the kids and you teach diving with some basic principles that we're going to share here, you're going to do great. And surprise, surprise, without trying very hard, you're going to start winning, right? They will perform in the meets if you take good care of them in practice, it turns out. Lee touched on several things that I'll just be able to glance right by. Focus on your athletes, not the judges, not the referee. You can't do anything about it. You can't fix the scores once they go up. I'm talking to myself right now, as much as I'm talking to any of you. I have a huge amount of patience for bad judging. I have no patience for biased judging. None. And I see it. I recognize it when I see it. So it gets me a little crazy, but I'm getting better. I hope you all will work on it with me. So the learning process, it's not complicated, right? It's tempting to jump into practice and have divers start doing hurdles and dives and do all the things, right? But we learn by building from simple to complex. We learn, in the sport of diving, we learn through repetition and basically rote muscle memorization, right? Over and over again. So how many times can you get a dive done with effort and practice in a season before the meet. How many dives can you get done, right? That's the challenge. How many times can you get each one of the kids on your team to do their front dive, their back dive, and their inward dive or their front flip before the first meet? That's why we have to be efficient. That's why we have to understand the learning process. If we give a child, all right, I want you to do a 4-step hurdle and a front dive tuck, and I want you to do a first reach, second reach, and then when you come out, you're gonna come out to the side. There's no possible way. It's too much stuff, right? We have to learn from a standing front jump, and then a tuck, and then we build, right? So it's very logical, simple to complex, and we work through, right? It works like a charm when you take people through step by step. It builds their confidence, right? So we're moving from simple to complex. We're trying to balance boredom and frustration. Boredom is when you ask me to do something I already know how to do, and I like, why am I doing this over and over again? Frustration is when I ask you to do something you can't do, and you're just mad, right? So we have to play that balance. If they're not a little frustrated, they're not engaged, right? But we gotta bore them a little bit because they have to be able to do front jump, front jump, front jump, front jump, front jump, back jump, back jump. Because you're not gonna get any good if you don't, right? You're just not gonna get any good. We start dry if we can. So if you have an option to have a lovely covered space like this where you could set mats up and teach the tuck position, the pike position, the straight position, 2-step hurdles, 4-step hurdles, arm patterns on the ground, you are far more likely to get that on the board. When they're on the board, now they're in front of they're on stage, they're in front of everybody, and they're flying through the air, they're gonna land in the water. So there's a million different distractions. If they can't do it on the ground, there's no chance. They're gonna do it flying through the air. No chance, right? So can they grab their tuck properly? Like, if you have your whole group sit down and show you a tuck position, they'll all do this, right? They all grab their position wrong and all that detail-y stuff, do that on the ground. So much more effective. Start simple, move to complex, right? When we teach, we are incorporating visual, auditory, and sensory feedback, right? So we can't just sit motionless and go, you have to jump up straight. You have to reach your arms all the way up. Yeah. It's just not going to work. It might work for some portion of your population, but it won't work for long because nobody learns through one mode all the time. We are all in need of changing modes, right? So you need a little kinesthetic. You need somebody to stand behind you and move your arms in the right direction. You need somebody to show you the thing. You need to watch another diver do the dive you're supposed to do. Every one of your kids needs that balance and that sort of that mix, right? So that they can stay engaged. The beautiful part of having these ridiculous phones in our pocket all the time is that we can use them for replay. That's the only reason you should touch your phone during practice, by the way. I hate to break the news to you. But yeah, that's a wonderful piece of the puzzle, being able to show people their dives immediately. But all of those things are really around the learning process. And we have to, as diving coaches, we have to be curious about the learning process because that's all we're doing, right? We are engaged in laying out the groundwork for everybody to go through this learning process, right? If you don't understand it and you don't think about it, you're at a big disadvantage. And if you're not curious about how each one of your divers works, right, you're not going to be able to motivate them individually, right? So you've got to understand your kids. So rule of thumb that has a little bit to do with this learning process is when divers have trouble, simplify the skill. Yeah, I have a diver right now who has a very good inward dive tuck. And for some reason, this week, when she does an arm circle, she flails in the air and does a back jump. She just can't figure out the timing of the arms. Whatever, it's fine. I'm pretty sure this is not going to be a problem in July, right? So I'm not going to sweat it. What do I do? Put your hands up, no arm circle, inward dive, bang, piece of cake. We'll do those until you're ready to do it with an arm swing, right? If you have a problem, simplify, back up, right? Can you take the hurdle away? Can you take the arm swing away? Can you do it standing? How do you simplify it, right? So these are rules of thumb for you to apply to all of the dives that you're looking at. One of the things I talk a lot about is performance standards, and that's really establishing in your own mind as a coach what you expect to see before you will allow the diver to go on to the next thing, right? So the analogy that I use for my divers, and I would encourage you to take a similar tack, is this. I'm going to decide what you do and when you do it. Like I decide what dives are to be performed in practice. That's my job as the coach, right? Your job is to follow directions and try to do the things that I'm talking about. And when you show me a level of competence on skill number 1, we will go to skill number 2. If it takes you 3 years to get from skill 5 to skill 6, so be it. Keep on chugging. If you can do it all to step 10 in one day, awesome. But that's what having a team of kids is, right? Is everybody's going to go through that different timing, but you have to know what your performance standards are. So here's a suggestion, right? Can they do the lead up skill 3 times in a row? Consistency, right? So they did a front flip and it went over and it was good distance and good height. Oh, you're ready for a front 1.5, right? Well, are you? Is that the first time you've ever done a front flip and gone over? Did you do 2 that were too close and short and then 1 that went long and now we're going for it? Right? That's not enough, right? So this is your responsibility, is to guide people through the progression, the skill chain, right? If you don't know the skill chain, I got it for you. I will give it to you. I will give you the skill chain. It is well established. It is not mine, right? Nothing that I say today is particularly mine, right? Which is, I think goes to credibility, right? Which is, don't believe me, believe Isaac Newton. Is what I'm going to tell you about how this stuff works is based on Newton's laws of motion, and I feel confident that you are not going to talk your way out of Newton's laws of motion. If you do, congratulations, you will win a Nobel Prize. Because anybody who corrects Newton wins a Nobel Prize. So that's a little bit about performance standards, and we're going to talk really specifically dive to dive about some crucial performance standards that will keep kids from getting hurt, okay? And that is the truth, right? Ultimately, we want to create this fun space and have a great time, but we have to keep people from getting hurt, right? And that is how we are all interconnected to one another. Because if you do a terrible job and get somebody hurt and you end up in the newspaper, that hurts me a lot, actually. If we have a well-publicized serious injury in the NVSL diving, that is a disaster for all of us. So we all have to watch out for each other, right? Performance standard rule of thumb. If a diver can perform good, safe lead-up skill 3 times in a row, this is a very good sign. Rushing to gain a new skill leads to setbacks. Ask me how I know. Charlotte Rodeville, inward dive tuck. Too close to the board, hits the back of her legs on the board. Takes me 6 months to get that dive back, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You create work for yourself when you rush things. Okay, so let's talk about some specific performance standards, right? Front dive, front jump and front dive. This is day 1 stuff. I am so sorry that I have to say this out loud and it scares me. Do you know how to swim in deep water? Everybody should be asking that on the first day of practice. Ask me why. It's terrible, but sometimes these things happen. Kids end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Complete overconfidence and a failure of parenting leads to a child that gets on the board and can't swim in deep water. has happened a number of times in my career. It's just a good question to ask to start. Front dives. We want to learn front dives where we're pushing off with the head stable. If the head moves down during the knee bend and push, it's going to create problems that may end up with the dive hitting the board, right? Front for 1.5, head goes down as you leave the board, it comes back in and your feet hit the board, right? So on front dive tuck and on inward dive tuck, the most important thing for all of us to know for absolute certain is that during the rise up and the bend down and the push off the board, the head has to stay stable. If a child is going up on their toes and then looking down at the board, you are about to have a problem. You're either going to get the top of the head or you're going to get the calves. My girl got the calves, right? So you want to make sure that they're doing jumps and they're doing all of their lead up skills with stability. If they can do a standing front dive tuck from the end of the board, up, down, jump, and then look at the water once they're in the air, you are not going to have any problem with an inward dive. And that is great because inward dives can be problematic, right? My suggestion, and this is I think where a lot of us get into trouble. There's two places where these key performance standards really help us, right? One, the learning process for an inward dive. And the learning process for the inward dive says you're not allowed to do an inward dive yet until you can do a standing front dive tuck on the end of the board. If you can't do a standing front dive tuck on the board, on the end of the board, you have no business doing an inward dive. And you're going to get somebody hurt. Because they have to practice bending their knees and pushing off with their head still. And you know they're going to do it right. They do the front dive right, they're going to be fine, right? So that's one of the processes that we go through. The other one that I know I will get pushback on, and I am ready for pushback. If you are not teaching a back dive tuck, you need to start teaching back dive tuck. And if you're not teaching back dive tuck, you should not be teaching a back flip to anyone. And if you haven't taught a back dive tuck to somebody, you have no business teaching them a reverse dive. None whatsoever. There is an order of operations that's going to keep these kids safe. If you go through the right order, you're going to teach them the stuff they need for the next skill, right? And that's what these performance standards are really about. Right. So you want to learn an inward dive tuck? Can you do a front dive tuck standing on the end of the board with your head stable? If you want to learn a back dive tuck, can you do a back dive straight, pushing off of the board with your head still? We don't start with a back dive tuck. We start with a back fall in, right? Everybody does that, right? You do a back fall in, assisted back fall in, hopefully first, then back fall in without a push, then a back dive with a push, and then a tuck back dive with a push. And then they start to go up, and you can watch the head position, which is everything on a back dive. If your divers are moving their head back as they're pushing off, they are setting themselves up for the number one cause of injury in our sport. Anybody want to guess? Some of you know because I've been chirping at you for years. It's a back flip. Back flip is the number one cause of serious, not spectacularly serious, but this is the one that we have on a regular basis, right? It's how we get stitches here and we break teeth, right? Why do we have so much trouble with back dive tuck? Because we are not, why do we have so much trouble with back flip tuck? Because we're not teaching back dive tuck. The head goes backward, the hips go forward, and you're going to have a close encounter, right? So the rule for back somersault is, yeah, you can learn a back somersault tuck as long as you got a back dive tuck that you can do 3 times in a row for 5 and 6. You do 5.5, 6 back dive tuck? Absolutely. We're go, right? Until then, I don't want to talk about it. It's off limits, right? It's absolutely off limits. What happens when we get these things out of order is that it becomes very difficult to undo those knots that you have now tied in a diver's development, right? So a diver who comes to me with a back flip and a reverse flip but can't do back dive tuck and reverse dive tuck, that is a disaster. That is a year and a half of my life that I have to spend trying to fix that clever little move by skipping steps. So I beg you, don't skip steps. We'll talk more about the steps, and I can give you a document that has a spreadsheet that tells you the order of all these things, a recommended order of progression. Very, very useful. Reverse dive tuck. When can you learn a reverse dive tuck? When you've got a good back dive tuck. If you don't have a good back dive tuck, there's no reason to worry about a reverse dive tuck, and B, you're going to get somebody hurt. Like, you're just asking for trouble. Okay, so our key safety concerns that we've already talked about. Inward dive and front takeoffs. Eyes going down as you're pushing off. If your head goes down, your hips go back, right? Back somersault. If the head goes up as they're bending their knees and reaching, you are going to have a problem. It gets very scary. Reverse dive tuck. If their head goes back while they're jumping, you are going to have a problem. Very scary. So, back dive tuck, same thing. So what do? On the first day, when we teach back jump, we teach them to watch the back of the diving board. Watch the back of the diving board. On the first day, when they do a front jump, look at the lane rope. Every one of you's got a lane rope right out there, right? Look at the lane rope when you take off. Look at the lane rope until you're in the air, then look at the water, right? Sure as it. Not while you're walking down the board on the hurdle. You don't look at the lane rope. You look at the board. Look at the board when you're walking. That's a really quick treatment of that. Sorry, we're going a million miles an hour. But that is, I hope that if you get nothing else out of this, that will stick, because that's going to save you a lot of trouble. If we get order of operations right, and we watch out for those key performance issues, you're going to have a lot more fun this summer, right? One of the things, I'm married to the world's greatest elementary school teacher, and she teaches me a lot about working with kids. And classroom management is something that we talk a lot about. And I think it's a skill set that all of us as diving coaches should really pull from, right? Which is the ability to get everybody to settle down and listen, which is the preparation that goes in before, right? It's the recognition that if there are kids playing on the diving boards behind me, that I can't sit here and do a presentation. I have to sit over there or over there, because what's in the background is what everybody's going to watch, right? So if there was a whole bunch of stuff going on here, I would have rotated over there, right? That's classroom management stuff. Can everybody hear me? Does everybody understand what's going on? Do you know what the plan is? Is everybody moving together, right? Classroom management. So let's pay attention to whether or not everybody's wandering off, right? Or if you've got command of a group of kids, right? These are skills. If you have a seasoned school teacher in your life, you just need to keep asking questions. Because my wife can make a little wrinkle on her forehead come out, and all the children stop talking. It's awesome. Very impressive, right? So we should all be so lucky to develop those skills. So the rule of thumb there is, if the music's too loud, if the sun is in their eyes, they are not paying attention. And you are talking to yourself. You can't teach them if they aren't paying attention. If they think you don't like them, you can't teach them. If they think you don't respect them, you can't teach them. So one of my favorite cheesy phrases of all time is, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And there is nothing truer. You will learn very quickly with a group of divers. If they don't think you're engaged and into it, they will not be engaged and into it. And they will not listen to a thing you say. Right? Atmosphere. Does everybody come into your practice and lay down on the mats and cover themselves with a towel and try to go back to sleep? I've seen this practice before, right? If your practice isn't like this, you've seen somebody else's practice like this, right? That's atmosphere, right? That's part of classroom management. That doesn't happen in a kindergarten classroom, because a kindergarten teacher knows that they will be eaten alive if they let their guard down that long, right? If you have lazy atmosphere at your pool with your group, you need to look at yourself. You are why. Either that, or you have an influential athlete who is pulling your group in that direction, right? Sometimes you have a diver who ends up older and in leadership, and then they become like an anchor on the group because of their group dynamic and their attitude, right? But ultimately, the atmosphere in your practice is yours. It's your responsibility, and it's your job. And if everybody's flat, it's you, baby. It's you. If you come into practice with your hoodie on and you slide your butt forward in that chair and you got your cup of coffee and you settle in, that is perfect for binging Netflix. That is not it for instructing children. That's not it. I mean, that's it for a little while, some days, right? But if you want to succeed in teaching children how to do this stuff, you're gonna have to get up, and you're gonna have to move, and you're gonna have to recognize that you are on stage. That atmosphere belongs to you. Whether you take responsibility for it or not, that's on you. But it's still your problem, right? What will help you? A, bring it. Bring the energy level when you walk in the door. Have a plan. If you don't have a plan, children know. They're not dumb. They're not slow, right? So if you have a plan, people will organize behind you and they'll move. If you look disorganized, they'll take advantage. That's a classroom management thing too, right? Atmosphere belongs to you. You establish it, you set it. And then you find older divers who are doing the right thing and you put them in positions of leadership. You find the people who are doing the right thing and notice them over and over again. And all of a sudden everybody's like, I want him to notice me. If you, so this is a powerful concept that that teachers know and coaches sometimes miss on, which is the energy that you bring, whatever you focus your energy on, you're going to get more of it. So if you have some naughty boys who are misbehaving and you spend all your time chirping, you're probably going to end up with more boys trying to misbehave, because attention is money almost in this economy. Children want your attention. If you're doing a good job of coaching, children will want your attention, right? And they will give you whatever they need to give you to get attention. So when a diver gets up on the diving board and starts to want to negotiate with me about whether or not this is really the thing that they should be doing right now, it's over. That conversation does not go anywhere. Nope. Your turn. Go. Okay, if you're not ready, step off. Next. Not mad. I don't yell at anybody. I don't yell at anybody. Next. If you're not ready, you're not ready, right? That sort of thing helps a lot, right? But what you focus your attention on, you're probably going to get a lot more of that, right? So I really like to notice effort. I like to notice focus. I like to notice those naughty kids, those kids that are always getting in trouble. I try to catch them doing something right. That really confuses them. They're so used to everybody yelling at them all the time, right? You know this. You know these boys. I'm sure there's girls like it too, but a lot of times it's the boys, right? and they're little stinkers. But if you catch them doing something right, all of a sudden they're like, oh yes, I'm a good one. They want to be good. They want that attention. Okay. Lee touched on this a little bit too, and I will reinforce it. Appropriate feedback. One thing, please, just try to do one thing. Don't give a diver 6 things to fix on one dive, especially when they're like 9. Come on, right? Well, when you start, you gotta elbow straight and your belly tight. You gotta walk down the board. You gotta hold this and the kid's just blanking out, staring at you as you monologue, right? Stop. One thing. Give them one thing to fix that you know is correct. Keep your arms straight up to the top of the first reach and stop at your ears. One thing. Can you do that? Well, you just went, and now you come up out of the water, and I'm not going to talk to you about keeping your belly tight or watching the board. I want to talk to you about the arm thing that we talked about because I asked you for it. Did you give it to me? That's accountability. One thing, and now I'm holding you accountable. Abigail, did you keep your arms straight in the first reach? Well, I don't know. Let's watch the replay. Or, I don't know. Did I? It felt like I did. No, not quite. Okay. So we're going to do 3 front jumps, and that's what we're talking about. Because we're not going to talk about arms on the first one and your hip alignment on the second one and your eye position on the third one. Nobody's going to get better like that, right? That's learning process, right? And that's appropriate feedback, not just for little kids. All of us need clear direction and one actionable instruction at a time. I know you all think you can drive your stick shift and update your Twitter feed and all that stuff at the same time. You're kidding yourself. You can't. One thing, accountable, do it. When they do it, y'all gotta have a party. If, as a coach, you give instruction to a child and they give you the correction, ooh, it's a party now, right? You better be clapping because that's what you want, right? That's all the relationship we're trying to get to is that transaction of I have information, I'm trying to get it into your head so you can do the thing. If you do the thing, we need to celebrate and reinforce that and do it again, do it again. And that's how we build. It is a slow process to do this right. But as a wise man once told me, and I have leaned on this one many times, sometimes slower is faster. And in diving, slower is faster. For sure. Make your appropriate simple. Make it efficient. We do not need a monologue about keeping your arms straight. Keep your arms straight. Can you keep your arms straight? Let's see. Accurate. Coach what you saw. Don't lie. If you missed it, tell them you missed it. Don't lie. You will get caught and you will undermine your credibility. Nobody believes you when you coach. When a kid does a dive and you go, you gotta get your hurdle knee up a little higher, and they go, I did a back dive. That was a great moment in your coach-athlete relationship, right? Coach what you see. If you miss it, admit it. If you're not sure, as I talked to Evan the other day, it's, I'm not sure about that. What did you feel? Or, let me think about that some more. It's not, I don't know. That doesn't build confidence, right? Actionable. What I mean by actionable is this. So if I say, get your arms up, you gotta get your arms up. I mean, that sounds right? It sounds like an accurate diving coachy thing to say, but it doesn't actually mean anything because I don't know what you're talking about. When do I get my arms up? Do I get my arms up in the first reach? Do I get my arms up in the second reach? Should I get my arms up faster before I hit the water? What are you talking about, right? Be critical of your own coaching. Listen to yourself. There are many times when we as coaches will say things that are completely inactionable. They just don't actually make any sense. And so often our divers look at us and go, oh, okay. Right? if you want to know if your diver is, oh, okay, every time you say something incredibly insane to them the next time you coach them. Oh, that's good. It just needs a little more screwdriver. Oh, okay. You're like, wait, you're not listening to me, right? It's a transfer of information, right? I got information, but I can't do cool dives, right? Like Alex can do cool dives, so I can give him that information, he gets better, right? That's what we're doing. It should be positive. You should be intentionally positive. I am disappointed if this is not my diver's favorite time of the day and their favorite thing to do. My expectation is that my divers will be very glad to be at practice. And that's on purpose. Because I want to be glad to be there, right? And so I try to bring that energy, right? And it actually works. I need it.
A lot of little ones don't understand things that you say, and you think that they do. Make sure that your divers understand that they can question you, and your
Amen.
response should probably, let me do a better job explaining that to you. Because if you tell them the same thing over and over, and they don't understand what you mean, you're never going to get anywhere.
Amen. And that is a really valuable process for all of us as coaches to go through, right? Which is never assume that the athlete is the problem. A lot of times as coaches get better, they start to just, oh, this kid doesn't listen to me, right? And it's an ego thing, right? We're like, oh, I told him to do the thing, right? Well, obviously what you're telling them, if they're not making that correction 3 or 4 times in a row and you're like, something's wrong. They don't understand. You're actually not making any sense. Or here's the third option. And this is one that I've run into a lot. Some divers, and maybe some of you will recognize this in yourselves as divers, are what I would call grocery list divers. In that they get up on the board and they think to themselves, all right, front dive, tuck. I'm going to stand up straight. Doo-doo, doo-doo. And they start to recite all the 73 things that any coach has ever told them that were of any value to them, and they try to do it all and hold it in their head, right? It turns out they do nothing well, right? Nothing, no part of it gets better because they're trying to do everything, right? Grocery list divers need to just, be informed that they are grocery list divers, that you're just trying to do way too much. And then, hey, let's focus on this one thing. Can you watch the end of the board in a front hurdle until you land on the end of the board and then shift your vision to the lane road? Try that with your entire team. I dare you. You will be shocked at how absolutely no one can do this. Half of them go one step and then look straight up into the sky and start walking. Right in the face. So simple, actionable things to address. We talked about being positive, and enthusiastic is basically the same thing. If you're not bringing it, nobody else is going to bring it. Don't expect the energy level to come from anywhere but you. I got a little thing about being efficient, and we've talked a little bit about progressions. How am I on time, Lee?
111.
111. So that means
You've
I
been
have
going.
20
You've been
minutes
going
left.
for 43 minutes.
Okay, very good. We'll talk a little bit about workout organization, and then I'm going to touch on some physics stuff. Don't let your eyes roll up into your head. I'll try to make it entertaining. I'll do a little Mr. Science thing. Getting things done in a practice, right? So I don't know. You may have 15 or 20 kids on your team. You may have 40 or 50. You may be one of those giant teams. Regardless of how many divers you have on your team and what your configuration is, if divers get more dives done under quality instruction, they get better faster. Period. End of statement. I will die on that hill. Be more efficient, get better faster. right? And we can't just be sloppy. It's got to be intentional, right? We've got to be practicing intentionally. But we also got to get stuff done. All right, so I observe the NVSL, the other teams in the NVSL primarily through dive meets, right? I'll go to a dive meet and I watch how everybody operates. And here's what I observe. We can be so much more efficient. We can get so many more dives done. In warm-ups, y'all are killing me. Absolutely killing me. Your kid is next in line and you are deep in a conversation about gosh knows what with somebody else, not paying attention to your diver who is now on the board and looks like a child who's just wandered into a movie theater halfway through the show. No idea what's going on, right? And then they wander around for a while 63 coaches sit and watch them and say nothing, right? And then they wander out to the end of the board and bounce a little bit, and then they set the fulcrum. And then they look at their coach and go, hey, what do I do? Meanwhile, the kids are in line and they're growing beards and aging up. It's taking forever. It's ridiculous, right? When your kid is next in line, you need to talk to them about what they're going to do so that when they're up, they're up. When your kid is getting up, they need to know. They're supposed to know what they're doing, get on the board, set the fulcrum. Yes, that's hard with 7-year-olds. This is the job. This is our job. What we do sometimes is we herd cats. But they're smart. You should give them a little more credit. They can do a really good job if adults give them a structure to work with. And we fail on a regular basis at meets to give kids structure to help them be efficient, right? Where are you supposed to swim? When you come up out of the water, do you sit there and float like a Rice Krispie in milk in the landing zone while you wait for your coach to pay attention? Now nobody can go. We're all waiting for your kid to swim out, right? Over and over again. This is why I get cranky at meets. I sit and go, where you go? Right? We can be a lot more efficient. Cue your kid when they get up on the board. Coach them quickly. We do not need a chitty chat. And my advice to you is never, ever allow a kid to stand on the board and negotiate. Just don't. Make it a thing that doesn't happen at your pool. They get up on the board and then, I don't know if I want to do this, right? Understand, like this goes back to the attention thing, right? Which is what children want, writ large, is to be noticed, to be seen. You are never more noticed than when you're the only kid on the board and you have stopped practice for everyone. You're the center of attention. Oh, this is a warm, fuzzy feeling, right? Everybody's waiting for me. And it kills your practice. And you know if you do that with a kid once, oh, they're coming back for that. That's a delicious little experience to be the center of the world, right? So we don't do that. That doesn't happen. If you want to come and talk to me while practice is going and everybody's still moving, I will hear your concerns briefly, right? But we're not stopping practice to have a dialogue. The phrase I use a lot with the divers that come to practice is, hey, you decided whether or not you wanted to join the dive team when you signed up. Let's go. Now we're diving. I'm not going to force anybody to do any dives, right? That's an important piece of this, right? A lot of times people ask me in these sessions, how do I get divers to do a thing? How do I get them to do it? They're so ready for the front 1.5 and they won't do it. How do I motivate them, right? And my response to that is, you have to be curious about the human being that you are working with. If you don't understand the person that you are coaching, like you don't know what to do to motivate someone. Why do they dive? What do they care about? Do they love it? Do they care? Is their mom making them do it? should you really be pushing them to do a new dive if their mom is making them do all this stuff, right? Like there is no answer to that question except understand people, right? When you understand people and you understand what they're motivated by, you can help them, right? And one of those stories that I lean on a lot is I had a young man join my team when I was coaching in St. Louis, and he could do a front flip really well. He was 7, just a little guy, clearly a talented little athlete, could do a front flip really well, but everybody on the summer team, you know how this happens, everybody wanted him to do the 1.5. Come on, Drew, you can do it, you can do it. And they really started to get after him, and it got in his head, and it was overwhelming for him. And he didn't know if he wanted to continue to dive because it was a lot of pressure. And he joined my age group team, and the parents were like, oh, we just want him to learn a front 1.5. Like, that's why he's here. And I said, oh, all right, let me talk to Drew. And I talked to this kid for 5 minutes, and what I realized was that everybody wanted it more than him. They were all so excited to see this cute kid do these things. Nobody bothered to realize that he was a human being who had his own ideas about stuff. My strategy? I told him he never had to do the dive as long as he worked with me. So you don't have to do it. I'm never going to ask you to do the dive. I will help you with the lead-ups, and you tell me when you're ready. 1 week. That kid not only decided to stick with diving and not go to baseball like he talked about, he ended up being a USA national champion on 10 meter, NCAA national champion on 10 meter, Olympic trials qualified. So these things are complicated and it's never obvious, right? And it's not a matter of like we're not here to bulldoze kids into doing stuff. We're not here to scare them. This is a developmental league. We need to have a gentle touch with this stuff, right? It's not simple, right? But I will tell you that one of the things that I've experimented with at Parliament Pool over the last few years is that I almost never tell people to do a new dive. My Parliament divers are here and I'm betraying a secret that I have kept for years. I almost never tell anyone to do a new dive. What I say is, I think you're ready. You should totally do that. I think it's going to be great. I don't say, right now. Very rare. And that has to be an established relationship with somebody who is committed to diving for me to go, you know what? You need to suck it up. Right? Okay. Last little bit. I don't know how you feel about us needing to get to torment the divers and throw them in the cold water. If you're dying to get in, we could do some stuff. But the more important thing for me to share with you, the more important thing for me to share with you before we get out of here is just some physics clarity to make sure that you understand how this stuff actually works, so that you can provide actual, actionable feedback. Because if you tell a diver, you're gonna jump straight up in the air, and then when you get to the highest point of the dive, you're gonna pull your arms down, and that's gonna rotate you around, and then you bring them up, and it dive in. And it's gonna be a beautiful front dive straight for 10s. And if you tell divers that, you're making it up. It doesn't exist. What you just described is fantasy, right? It doesn't work that way, right? So if we don't understand how it works, we're not very useful as coaches, right? People ask me how to motivate divers. You motivate divers by being useful and by being trustworthy. The diver trusts me, and I have demonstrated to them that I can tell them things and it makes their dives better. They listen. Simple, right? If they don't trust me, if they don't think I'm right, if I tell them stuff, they do it and it doesn't work, they're not going to trust me, right? So I base my instruction in science anytime I can because I know it's right. If I can give you instruction that I know for a fact is correct, I don't care if you're an Olympic gold medalist. It's still wrong, right? I'm not intimidated by your fancy accomplishments if I understand physics and I understand how things work, right? Because I'm going to be right. Because physics is physics, right? So, what do we need to know? Imagine, without doing this the long way, let's see if I can do this the brief. The important thing that we have to work with is Newton's laws of motion, and the key one here is action-reaction, right? And what that is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And what we need to know about that is that, like, for example, if I were in a weightless environment, right? Zero gravity, and I'm floating in the air, right? On the International Space Station. When I raise my arms up, my body goes down at the exact proportion to the mass that I have moved up, right? This is an action, and the equal and opposite reaction is that my body moves down relative to that motion, right? We're following your center of gravity, right? The balance point on your body, right? That stays stable when you're floating in space, right? If you're in the air, your center of gravity is going to follow a path. It's not going to move around, right? But you can wiggle around it. You can make all kinds of motions, right? If we understand that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, it opens up all kinds of cool puzzle-solving strategies. And that's, for me as a coach, it's a puzzle. Why did it do that? Why isn't it spinning faster? What's wrong with this thing, right? It's a little machine with a person inside, right? So we're trying to solve that little puzzle. Well, let's look at a piece of diving and we can understand a little better. If I take my last step and it strikes the board and I'm swinging my arms through as I step, this motion of the arms going up here, that movement is driving my body down. That's action-reaction, right? So pushing the body down as the arms swing up, what does that do? That bends the board down. That loads the board with force, and the more force you load the board with, the more force the board recoils with, right? So that's what we're trying to accomplish. The straighter the arm, the longer the lever, the more force it drives down, right? I'm not going to run through the force equals mass times acceleration thing, but trust us on this. It is undeniably correct to keep your elbows straight in the first reach all the way to the top and stop. So that's the stuff that we're looking for, is the unquestionable actions that work. Okay, so let's go back to our zero gravity room, right? I'm in that spot, hanging in space, right? My hands are above my head. I throw my arms down and I grab my tuck as tight as I can. If you're a parliament person, you're not allowed to answer this question. What happens? Zero gravity. Throw, tuck. Anybody?
You don't really move anymore.
You just tuck? Does anybody think you flip?
No. You don't flip.
Right. Right, good. The vast majority of the time when I ask that question, people go, oh, you flip. You just flip. And you don't. And if you don't understand that part, you are at a significant disadvantage in coaching diving because you don't understand the rules of the game. You don't know how this stuff works, right? What do we need to do a flip? I'm in my room and I throw my hands down and I tuck. Well, how do I flip? What do I need?
Kickback.
A what?
A kickback. Like kicking away.
Kickback. Where am I going to get kickback?
You put your heels. Kick your heels back.
Do I do that?
Whole leg.
If I do that, will I spin? What if I do this and then this and then this? Will I accelerate it? No, I won't. You need something to push off of. You need something to push off of. The only way to flip is to have something to push off of, right? So, in order to create somersault, we are pushing against the board with our legs. We're throwing the arms down and out. The longer the arms are, the greater the leverage, right? So we know that this is a fact. Longer, straighter arms create more spin. Faster arms create more spin. No debate here, right? Long, straight arms there, legs pushing. What's going on? If the arms come down and forward, we're creating an equal and opposite reaction force that way, right? So if I do that in space, on the space station, I do a pike, right? But because my feet are against the diving board, when my arms throw out like that, I'm creating an action-reaction, but my feet are stuck against the board. So now I have an action-reaction relationship between the board and my feet. My feet are trying to go that way. So the board reacts with a force that way. Spin. Creates spin, right? So you're throwing and pushing at the same time, right? This is why, if you watch in slow motion, like somebody doing something crazy, like a front 4.5 on 1 meter, they leave the board, they're doing tuck, right? They're doing a big spinner and tuck, but when they're leaving the board, their legs are completely straight. They're in a pike. Here, throwing off the board, and then they tuck in the air. It's because they're trying to get all of that reaction force down into the board while the arms are coming down. That creates spin. What does this tell us? It tells us that we can affect each one of the dives without thinking about it too hard, right? There's a pretty straightforward way to do this, right? Any of the action that we want to create to rotate has to occur while our feet are on the board. We can do lots of things with that rotation once we leave the board, right? So the analogy is a little bit like a gas station. You can get all the fuel you want at the gas station, but once you drive away, that's what you got. Once your feet come off the board, that's how much fuel you've got. Now, you can drive gently and get a lot of mileage out of it, or you can drive like a crazy person, right? So you can be efficient or inefficient, right? Front dive straight, inefficient, right? Long body, lots of work. Tuck, efficient, right? But we generate that spin on the board, right? So we talked about performance standards and motions that cause trouble. And now that we have this next piece with action-reaction, we can understand why, right? So and think about it. Your head, your skull is like 8% of your body mass, right? And it's on a bendy stem, right? It's real easy to move around. So that's creating all kinds of variables. Anytime the head moves, it's causing trouble, right? So the more stability is, the better, because 7 or 8% of your body mass shifting around is going to do all kinds of wild stuff. So let's talk about an inward dive. You bend your knees down, your head shifts forward. Now all of a sudden you've got 8% of your body mass that's shifted out in front of your center of gravity. Ruh-roh. You're going to jump straight up, skim the back of your head, and clonk your calves on the board or your heels, right? Because your eyes went down to your feet before you pushed up. Number one. That one will get you. That one's going to get you, right? So we want to stay head stable, eyes on the lane rope in the bend, and push. Make a huge difference, right? We learn that with the front dive tuck, then we turn it to an inward dive tuck so we don't get anybody hurt. Backflip. Why is backflip so problematic? Well, if I'm here in a backflip and I lift my head up, I get an action that creates an equal and opposite reaction down and back against the board that way. So this head movement causes the hips to shift forward. And then you've got a world of trouble, right? So divers that move their head back on a back dive tuck are begging for trouble. Begging for trouble. right? It's only a matter of time. So we talk about things like keeping our eyes locked on the back of the diving board until you touch your shins in the top, right? We talk about doing an inward dive and watching the back of the board until you're completely off the board and then shifting your vision to the entry point. These things will keep your kids safe. If you can keep your kids safe, it will make your job a lot easier. Because I will tell you that coaching divers who smack a lot is a lot harder than coaching divers that don't smack a lot. They get twitchy. They get real twitchy after they've been knocked around a little bit. So if you take good care of them, they will be much easier to work with, right? So my suggestion to you is take your time, teach simple things well, and then build on them. It's not fast, and I'm sorry for that. But it is, in fact, the right way, right? I started at Parliament Pool in 2017 for Parliament Pool Round 2, and we were dead last. Dead last. And we just taught hurdles and jumps and basics. That's all we've done. And we're getting better, right? Everybody can do it. You just gotta start simple and stay on top of it, right? I think we have covered a lot of ground, and I'm only 5 minutes over, which is pretty impressive. I will be, this is really important to me, okay? I worked as president of the United States Professional Diving Coaches Association for several years. This is a pet project of mine. I'm really committed to seeing this process through and helping people who want to get better at coaching diving. It made a big difference to me that people were incredibly generous with their expertise. So I tell you that because if you want to get better at this, just get in touch with me. I will be so happy to help. Just so happy to help. All season. If you guys need anything, let me know. If you want to get my my phone number, you can text me. I'm very good at texting. I do not email or phone call well at all.
Can you briefly go over what it means to be in a ready or starting position for the
yes,
divers?
Thank you. All right. So let's talk quickly about making sure that the divers are signaling to the judges clearly that the dive is going to be good, right? So when we teach the elements of the dive, the first element of the dive is stance, right? Stance is I'm ready. I'm going to do the dive now, right? What we don't want to do, and what this does for us, is it gets the attention of the judges, and it gives it a formal feel, right? And judges are human. They are susceptible to suggestion. And when you suggest to the judges that you are a professional diver who is well trained, all of a sudden they're thinking about higher scores too, right? It becomes accessible. What we don't want is the diver that gets up on the board, sets the fulcrum, and then just starts walking, right? You get no signal for the judges and the referee that things are about to start, right? A lot of the divers, especially the ones that are more involved in age group diving, have gotten into the habit of like visually checking with the referee before they go. I think that's good practice. But yeah, let's make sure, and you do this by making them do it in practice. Make them set up and show. Because it gets a little loose in practice and everybody's just kind of going and going and going. That's not intentional practice, right? If you want to prepare for a meet, you got to practice like you're in the meet. All right.
Hey, can I get a round of applause for Doug? All right. If anybody did not get a handbook, please come up as we're done here, and we've got some spares. QR code. I know it was passed around. Please provide feedback. We've got a copy here. Please provide feedback so we can see if there's things we can do for improvement. I do want to.
If there are subjects
that you would like us to cover, I would really love to hear that. 'Cause
Very good.
I've kind of gotten ingrained in what I talk about, but I would love to hear.
And I do want to thank the divers who came out to perform, but Mother Nature didn't support us. Thank you for your time, and appreciate that. Thank you to Amy and the Great Falls Pool for hosting us. Any final questions or comments?
Yes, sir. Yeah, if anybody wants a progression spreadsheet, I have a spreadsheet that I've already put together. I can give it to individual people, I can give it to you guys, and you can distribute it however you want to do that.
Yeah, if you can send it to me, we can do it.
I'll send it to Lee.
All right, thank you all very much.